If I'd have to start this review with saying anything, I'd say this game has aged horribly. Wonky controls, almost imperceivable graphics, physics that were undoubtedly created by a 12-year-old on PCP. But that isn't the point of these reviews. The point of these reviews are both to see how a game stands the test of time and explain a game in the context in which it was delivered. The cultural and developmental impact it had on the market, its core player base, and video games to come, and in this case, we would have to travel back to 1996. I have to transform my frame of reference into my 7-year-old self again, and maybe then I will understand what this game truly is. I have arrived at my conclusion. Twisted Metal 2 is the second in a series of games that would once be on top of the world and then drown out into obscurity as players grew tired of the same gimmicks year after year. According to the internet, Twisted Metal 2 is also the most successful title the franchise ever had, which makes sense to me as it was my favorite in the series and possibly the most influential multiplayer game I had played as a young child. Cars travel around in a high-stakes tournament where there is only one survivor, and the winner will have their deepest desire granted to them by the game's antagonist, Calypso. Each driver travels from location to location in the hopes of being the last one alive. I'd like to start off by doubling back on my initial statement. Back in the day, this game did not fucking suck. Every gamer knows that there are certain ways for you to settle the score between you and your friends. Some people played GoldenEye, some people played fighting games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, but for everyone else, there was Twisted Metal. Playing with multiple friends was a unique experience in the late 90s. Before the saturation of online games and everyone having a basic understanding of the thrill of player versus player environments, the idea that you and multiple friends could face off against each other for nerdy supremacy was the peak of video game entertainment, which it still is to this day. Okay, let's just come out and say it. These graphics are pretty bad. The highlight for me is the animated cutscenes where the artwork takes center stage while the narrator explains what is going on in each scene. However, in the face of several other of the games offered during this time, Super Mario 64, Duke Nukem, Tomb Raider, and Diablo, just to name a few, the graphics offered in Twisted Metal 2 still weren't pushing any real boundaries for its time. That being said, there's a lot of design choices that were pretty outrageous, and that's a plus in my book. There is some sensation between the player, their car, and their environment I can loosely call physics, but for the most part, there are none. Your car moves forward and there's an attempt to portray how fast you're going, but from what I can tell, the moment you're moving, you're doing 60 miles an hour. It's a pretty dismal attempt, to be completely honest. The only true sensation that gives any aspect of in-game physics is when there's a collision of some sort, which happens to be most of the time. That being said, I got a lot of motion sickness while recording this review. The physics tie in directly to the gameplay, of course. I had fond memories of masterfully controlling my car and knowing exactly what I was doing in almost every engagement back when I was 7. But it has become abundantly clear that those memories are either entirely biased or that they are and will forever remain just memories. The issue with going back and playing ambitious titles like this after nearly 25 years is that the advancement we've seen in video games since then have ruined any semblance of what it was really like to play these games in their heyday. The story for me is one of the strongest aspects of this game. They at least made an attempt at giving players in-game lore surrounding each character, which allowed for some level of connection for you to base which character was your favorite. And the overall storyline of an evil villain weaving together an intricate web of chaos for a high-stakes battle royale of carnage and mayhem fits the gameplay and aesthetic of this game perfectly, and it helps to completely package this title in a nice fashion, where it makes enough sense that you don't even question why these individuals are killing each other. The characters are easily the most iconic thing about this game. Everyone remembers Axel, or maybe they just remember him as that unfortunate guy who is attached to his own wheels. I identified with Axel the most during this review, as his storyline was easily the most fucked up. Trapped in his vehicle by his own dad for 20 plus years and just wants freedom from his prison. Every other character was pretty memorable, but by far the most was Sweet Tooth. The ice cream van and the evil grin have been a staple in almost every Twisted Metal title, and in fact you could probably just call this game Sweet Tooth and most people would be like, oh yeah, I played that game. A huge aspect of both this game and most video games during this time that made them so much fun, especially for my 7-year-old self, cheat codes. A long time ago, you would be able to push a series of buttons and manipulate the game in a way the developers intended, just so you could have fun. You bought a product and had complete control over it. The makers didn't care if you broke the game. These cheats were a way to enhance your own individual experience, and a lot of the time increase the amount of time you would spend playing the game, as opposed to getting bored right away. All in all, I'd have to say it's entirely possible some games are best left on the shelves of nostalgia. Like I've said before, I had extremely fond memories of playing this game, and I still do. Most people I have talked to when I said I was shooting this review said something along the lines of, oh hell yeah, and then proceeded to remember fondly with me their favorite moments of their personal experiences with the franchise. And that is what it is all about, paying homage and remembering where we come from as gamers. But as for the future of Twisted Metal, I feel they would have to drastically change their core formula or dive in extremely deep to tap into that nostalgia. But sadly, I fear that is already what they attempted to do with the slew of titles that followed Twisted Metal 2. And sadly, we all know how that ended up.